In today's episode of Grow Your DJ Mixshow podcast, we're going to look at strategies and tips of how to use social media to grow and expand your podcast. So let's get right into the content. Very first thing we need to do is identify your target audience. Who are you targeting? Before we could even begin to think about the strategies, we need to know who we're looking at. This is a group of people that are most likely to be interested in our music and music styles in our podcast. So we have to make sure that we have the right target audience first before we can even begin to push our content, our music towards them. Number 2, create podcast promotion posts. Now, you want to do a lot of different styles of posts. You just want to rely on one type or a text post or a link post. I like to mix it up. I like to use static images. I want to go and utilize the square and the story type of images. You can also use GIF files and videos. The new thing that we're also utilizing is smart links and building these smart link pages that you can kind of set up like a mini website. So once you get them to that smart link page, it has information about your podcast. And we typically utilize that to push our audio and video podcast content. So make sure you do different types of podcast promotion posts out there. And one thing that we tried, and we're still working on it, is to have a unique podcast promotion post for each day of the month. Come up and create 30 different types of posts for the month. Now that's a challenge because we're still growing our podcast and growing the way that we do these things. So I'll put it out there to you guys as well. Try 30 different types of posts, one day for each post. Now the next one is leveraging hashtags. Don't forget to use hashtags in your posts. So, how are hashtags? Are they still relevant? It really depends upon the platform that you're utilizing. For example, Twitter is very, very relevant. It's also relevant in Instagram. Facebook, I think things are changing over in Facebook, and I'm really not sure about TikTok. But use these hashtags. They'll help you to reach a broader audience and help improve your discoverability. Now, particularly if you're doing video podcasts and you're having your mix shows on YouTube, for example, definitely make sure you utilize those hashtags in your content. It's proven that hashtags will help you reach a broader audience and help improve your discoverability. The next tip is to utilize paid ads. Now, this is a very, very important one, and we're actually going to do a video podcast to show this in action. But paid ads are one of the most important and most effective ways to grow your podcast reach on social media. So there are a myriad of different articles and different videos and different processes on utilizing paid ads. It also depends upon which platform that you're utilizing, if you're doing Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or even TikTok. So we won't get into the details of this in this podcast episode, but we will have a video version that comes out here shortly that we really will dive deep into showing how we utilize not only Facebook and Instagram ads, we also use a chatbot software called ManyChat to help cultivate our community of followers and listeners to our podcast. So make sure you're locked into us here, and that episode will be coming up very, very soon. The next one is cross-promote. How can you cross-promote? Well, if you know other DJs that are in your same genre, cross-promote each other's podcast. You can actually host one of their shows in your podcast and vice versa, so that you can exposing your audience to the new DJ and vice versa, the other DJ exposing their audience to you and your content. So that's important. It's something that we don't really do a lot as DJs because sometimes we feel like we're in our own lane. But this is a way right now to be able to grow and expand your reach as a DJ. So try cross promoting your podcast with another DJ. And while we're speaking on that, the next point is number 6, have guest DJs. Invite a guest DJ that is within your niche onto your show and do a hour mix there. Or maybe do a special where you have an hour and then invite the guest DJ to do another hour on your mix show program for that particular week. Again, it's the same premise as before in cross promoting. That DJ would then promote this podcast episode to his followers and vice versa. So you get exposure and the guest DJ gets exposure. So it's a win-win situation here. And this opens up your audience to their audience, which is, it also depends on the DJ. If the DJ is much larger than yourself, then you have the ability to grow by leaps and bounds. And I think this strategy here, again, is another one that we as DJs don't utilize often, but, is often mislooked and looked over. And I know in the regular world of podcasting, this happens all the time. And it's one of the tips that a lot of people use to grow their following and the listenership pretty quickly. So let's us, I'm saying that to myself as well, let's us look out and reach out to guest DJs and have them on our podcast periodically. Number 7 is educate your audience. Educate the audience about the music that we're playing. Let me give you an example. I'm a piano, Afro beats, Afro house, all that are inspirational and gospel inspired. So what I like to do is, I don't know who's listening to my podcast. It may be their first time, it may be their 100th time. So immediately I tell them about the podcast and tell them what we're doing and what types of music we're playing. Now, also, outside of the actual podcast episode itself, in my social posts that we were talking about earlier, we try to add more information about our subgenre of music. What's hot? What's coming out today? What is the newest artist that's on the block? I like to be the DJ that breaks music out there, that introduce people to brand spanking new music and brand spanking new artists that are producing the music styles that we put on our show. Another way of doing that is highlight the track listings of your shows, of your podcast episodes, so that people, they'll hear the mixes and then they'll be able to go see what these songs are and go and buy them from their favorite online retailer. And what you could do, if you really want to get down to it, and now we're not talking about monetization in this episode, but if you set up as an affiliate on, let's say, Amazon, then you can get a percentage of those sales for those tracks that you show in your track listings. You may have to do a hyperlink and it ties back to your affiliate code. Yes, and it may be 25 cents off of a $1 sale. But hey, in this business, in this way, every dollar, every dime counts. So let's educate our audience about different aspects of our shows. Even if you can do snippets of the shows, my podcasting software allows me to take video clips of our shows. So we'll take a clip and we'll put that as one of our promotion posts that we have for the month. We'll put that out there. So every single week we do 2 podcasts. So that is automatically 8 posts that are video snippets of the actual podcast. So let's look at different ways that we as DJs and as podcasters can educate our audience. Another example, do a behind the scenes video to show how is your studio? What's your studio look like? What does it take to put out a podcast episode? People like to see the behind the scenes of their favorite podcast that they're listening to or they're watching. It's a video version of this same thing. So let's show them that. The next point, which is my point number 8, is leverage user-generated content. Now, how do we get user-generated content through our DJ Mixshow podcast. Our main source of this are reviews that we get from our podcast listeners. And we have and love our great podcast listeners that listen to both of our shows. So we will highlight their comments out again. Let's go back to our promotional post point earlier. We'll highlight their comments and their reviews on our post. And a lot of people want to see, well, if this person likes it, then maybe I should listen to it as well. You can also ask them to share some videos or stories or how has this show, how has your podcast episode, how has what you're doing as a DJ through your podcast, how has that affected that person? I had a lady put a comment on a Facebook post that was telling how she was really, really depressed one day and down, like seemed like life was really down and heavy on her shoulders. She came across our Gospel Meets Dance podcast, listened to it, and immediately she said that she found herself shortly after up dancing around in her house, feeling overjoyed through the music that we were playing. You never know who you're impacting through your show. You never know who you're impacting and where they are or what they're going through the moment that they're listening to your podcast. So that really blessed me and really gave me more fire to continue to do what we're doing and how we're doing through our 2 podcast shows that we put out on a weekly basis. And now our last point, which is a very important point as well, of how to grow your podcast through social media is tracking and analyzing your data. Data is king and data doesn't lie. How can we get a better understanding of how we're growing or what areas to focus on if we're not looking at and analyzing the data from our podcast feeds? It's very important. Right now, depending upon which podcast software or company you're utilizing, they will provide you certain metrics that'll let you know, number one, how many people are listening to your podcast on a weekly basis, how and on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly basis, how long they're staying and listening to your shows, and then how do these shows compare to each other? And sometimes, how do they compare to other shows in your genre as well? Our aggregator that we use to push our podcast out is hearthis.at for our DJ podcast. And they provide us not only those stats that I was telling you earlier, but then also it breaks down on where in the world are these people listening, all the way down to the country. They also provide us information about the number of downloads as well. So we've been able to see and focus better on our social media ads and our strategies based upon the metrics and analytics that we see through our podcast provider. Now, another thing that we do is we have a link generator. Now, a link generator gives us a customized link that we can put another link within it. And our link generator gives us also analytics as well. So I can take a link that is created for my episode or for my podcast show in its whole and put that through social media ads and put it through a Facebook ad strategies. And I'll not only see analytics and metrics from Facebook, but then I can see how people actually clicked on that particular link, how many people, where they came from, even down to what type of device and operating system they use when they clicked on that link. Why is all that important? The more data we have, the more we can further hone in on our audience, and the further we can then create content and reach that audience because we know exactly who they are. So analytics and tracking these analytics are very crucial and a critical step in growing and building up our podcast shows. Hey, this is your boy DJ Marcus. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and I hope that you really got something from this podcast. I hope that you were able to get a nugget or two that you can immediately go and utilize and take and implement into your DJ podcast and your podcast programs. As always, leave a review, a comment. Let us know who you are and where you are. Till next week, God bless, and I'll see you on the flip side. DJ Marcus, and I'm out. Peace.